Today we cover the new lore within the Carrion Lord of the Imperium by Dembski-Bowden from the last Post-heresy novel, Era of Ruin. It's one of the short stories contained in there. It asks questions such as, did the Emperor put parts of himself into the primarchs in the opinion of the Custodes? What did the Custodes think of the primarchs after their war had tore apart the galaxy? What, in their character, made the primarchs war so much? And how did the Emperor access the warp energy he used in making them? And how did the Custodes counsel him on that? Let's find out the answers. So, welcome friends to another 40k video, and let's begin. The story is told from the point of view of a Custodes, Diocletian Coros. It opens with him thinking, I was there, as were they, on the day our king did what he should never have done. With great engines and scientific violence, he plunged his metaphysical hand into the realm between reality's veil. When he withdrew his questing touch, still burning with the violation of breaking the dimensional barrier, there it was, a divine and malignant light. The Emperor needed it, as the numbers of the Custodes were not enough. He speaks of a pact, but did not see it take place. What he did see, the Custodes, when the primarchs were made, was machines. I saw machines. I saw machinery torn out of a bygone age, when humanity had mastered marvels to put our greatest achievements now to shame. Our king hadn't invented these, any more than he invented the golden throne. His vision was humanity's golden future. It was built on the techno-archaeological bones of the past. The engines I saw began as charcoal and parchment, evolving into hololithic skimmer, written in flickering lights through the stagnant air of the palace's catacombs. Were these ancient engines called for elements of abominable intelligence from the era when robots could think and reason? Our king patchworked biotechnical solutions, blending engineering and necromancy. The function of these machines was unknown to me, unknown to all the Custodes. The Custodes knew the machine relied on magic machinery, and when he did this, took this action, the Custodes were there. The Emperor gathered his most trusted ones, and all the Custodes there told the Emperor no. Now that last little excerpt was something that Diocletian has written, it's like a record. Now we'll go to his actual point of view. Diocletian writes, and we return it now to Valdor, Amon and Ra, and others speaking. They say they will lead the people of the Imperium into battle. They all question their king, and as they do, it's over a backbeat of machines drilling their way through the dimensional barrier. The Emperor trying to access chaos for his primarchs, I would think. Diocletian thinks how in the future they will fight with the Sisterhood. Currently of the Silent Sisterhood, only Genetia Kroll exists, and she has yet to cut out her tongue. She stands some way from the Emperor, sensed by all but seen by none. The Emperor speaks, the name of one Custodes, Diocletian. The Custodes wait for him to say what they are all thinking, that the 10,000, the Custodes, will lead humans into the galaxy, that the primarchs and their gene sons are not needed. I don't think it matters what I say. Dio leans on his spear and inclines his head to the Emperor. I don't think it matters what any of us say. With respect, my king, I think you're going to do it anyway. We now get an excerpt from Diocletian's thoughts on immortality. He wishes humans would stop praying to the Emperor, as the Custodes know what happens to a body after it dies. The fortunate enter swift oblivion. The unfortunate are the playthings of demons forever. It is the fundamental truth of reality, and the one thing our king never wanted the species to know. Then he thinks how the Custodes can die, but they question if they could even age at one point. He thinks we reach a state of middle age, and then stasis in our aging process. Was there some temporal sorcery used in our creation? Something undetectable that our king never shared with us? We suspect not. We aren't made the same way the primarchs were made, with tampered metaphysics and borrowed essence. We aren't flawed from the very start. There are those of our number that believe, not without precedent, that we don't age if we remain in our king's presence. That is, he, something about his body and soul, binds us to immortality. No one has ever been gone from the Emperor's side long enough to test this notion. He then asks if there's something inside us, some aspect of our loyalty, founded on selfishness. That immortality is ours, but only if our king lives. They don't have an answer, the Custodes. and he wonders if the Emperor kept so many others in the dark. Did he keep something from the Custodes, or did they fear to ask him about it? We then jump onto the first funeral of the 10,000. They don't have a ceremony for it, as none have ever truly died. Sagittarius suffered such wounds, but became a dreadnought. But now Xerxes is truly dead. They bring his body. The humans who fought with them leave them. The Thunder Warriors know less courtesy. Thunder legions come sniffing around, some curious, some conciliatory, neither of which the custodians have any interest in hearing. The Proto-Astartes are sent away with polite dismissals, and the occasional wordless grunt. Diocletian stands with others. What to do is discussed. Should they return the body to the palace? Make a cairn? Should they burn the remains? And if so, do they do it alone, or place the corpse with the fallen humans to be incinerated on the mass pyre? There are political considerations too. Several of the others have already noted them. The humans would feel honoured if a custodian was burned in a pyre with the imperial army slain. Is that an honour that should be conferred upon them? Is there a morale, a factor for the 10,000 to take into account? Would Xerxes have willed it this way? We then observe Diocletian speaking to Valdor after that initial moment. I didn't know you could sing. It sounded sad. That isn't the right word, and he knows it. But no other word seems righter in this place. Ra would say something like, it sounded melancholy, like you mourned a future that will never come to pass. But the day is unlikely to dawn when Dio phrases things in those terms. Valdor, who sang it, says it is a lament. There was a Nordific tribe a century ago. The Abar, do you know of them? Diocletian does, though he wasn't present for the war that annihilated them. I've seen their entries in the palace archives, nomads of the Zurha expanse, matriarchal, spiritual, dedicated to ancestor worship. Constantine nods his confirmation. They sing dirges by the pyres of their fallen. For a moment he lifts his dark eyes to the occluded sky, believing that their words join the wind and their loved ones' ashes, and so the dead are sent into the afterlife with the blessings of the living. Diocletian has never been a passionate student of history. They wonder then why the Emperor didn't tell them what to do with the body. Valdor says perhaps he keeps his distance because he comprehends that something seismic has occurred in our ranks, or perhaps he already muses over the logistics of his next conquest, and the emotions of his creations are a matter of absolute indifference. It doesn't matter why. He leaves us alone tonight, Dio. All that matters is that he does. And then they search for the rights to order the first of their kindred to die, knowing that whatever they decide will shape precedent for the second and the third, and every life they lose in the king's long war for the soul of the species. Then we find Diocletian during combat. We see how he feels when the Emperor's dream dies, because the entire Eurasian landmass quakes with sudden torment. It's Magnus the Red, who's blown through the hole in the webway, and the webway gate is a wound, wrenched wide, vomiting inhumanity into the throne room. The Custodes, led by Valdor, sprint to meet them. The Emperor says into the breach, and his voice is broken, heart-struck. He wears the face of a man watching his hopes die. The anathema Psychana join the fight. Diocletian talks of the bond between the Custodes and the sisters, and how they are pair-bonded in warfare. His pair bond is Carrion, and in this fighting, they work well together. And he's never seen the Emperor weep before. Until now, he hasn't been sure it was possible, whether there was enough humanity in the man for such a human reaction. Diocletian turns back to the gate. Its alien lights scream against his armour. He steps forward. Next we get the thoughts of Diocletian, who asks, why did they betray us? This is a reference to the primarchs. And he says, it's often said in doggerel screeds and propaganda offered up by the remembrancers that the primarchs each embodied an element of the Emperor. Some say they even carried his soul, portioned away into pieces. This is a lie. At best, it's a half-truth. There was no division of soul stuff, no imbuing of the Emperor's attributes into the gestating monsters that thought they were his sons. The Custodes observe that the Emperor existed for unification, to unite the lost worlds of humanity. The primarchs, from their first steps out into the galaxy, existed in a state of disunity. They trusted one another. They resented each other's glories. They fought amongst themselves even before the Great Rebellion. Was this tendency towards infighting because the Emperor had sliced away sections of his spirit and gifted them to his creations? Were they spiritually, fundamentally incomplete? I believe not. The Custodes, Diocletian believes the opposite. They were perfectly complete. Each of them embodied their creator in something close to his entirety. Each of them possessed the same messianic urge for absolute unity that the 10,000 saw in their king. They didn't fight amongst themselves because the emperor left them incomplete. They hated one another because each of them was an emperor within their own minds. We then return to Diocletian after the heresy. He thinks that unless Webway grows silent, he will kill him. Dio and the custodians at his side, and the remaining Sisters of Silence, furtive, persecuted sisters, are all there in the grand chamber, and they will draw their blades, and they will kill the creature that believes itself heir to the empire. Time and again they have endured Guilliman's speeches, his declarations of intent, his orders that counter even the wishes of his own brothers, to the point where there are already whispers of another war. I roll there for the Custodes. A war this time over Guilliman's vision for the Imperium. Are you listening, Diocletian? I call for unity, at a time when we need it most. The Custodes hears Webway. He then says Tribune, Diocletian's title, the one that once was Raz, and Diocletian stops breathing. He's an animal in that moment, a thing of urges and desires, frozen in place as he feels his heartbeat quicken, and the other's senses pick up on it too. It passes between every talon in the chamber, as wordless and true as his sister's hand signals. He sees Hado shift position, ever so slightly adjusting his balance. He sees Carrion tilt her head a fraction of an inch, and by her thigh she taps her finger against the tip of her thumb in silent signal. He sees others, custodians and sisters, in absolute harmony and absolute unity. If he acts now, they will act with him, before the courageous and honourable fools in blue can even aim their bolters. My mistrust, says Diocletian, and he wants to say so much more about the lives lost, and the ones that would be lost if Dawn and Webway disagreed and the other brothers got involved in another conflict, and how the legions should be broken up, and that didn't even cover the traitors. Saul would burn before Diocletian could completely speak. He wants to say it, and he knows what he would say. Then we get a further narrative passage from Diocletian, and it's what he would have said. You and the malformed coven of tainted genetics you call a family have no right to set foot upon this world. You say you lost a father, but you didn't. You lost the scientist that created you. You lost the visionary that had such high hopes for you. But he was never your father. You saw the Emperor will trust you now with the resurrection of the Imperium. If he trusted you, why did he not include you in the 10,000? Why weren't you one of them? Why weren't you called upon to defend the webway? Why did he entrust that most vital task to his true chosen? Why, whenever he related the truth of the galaxy, was it never his sons that he told? He instead calls the Talons to him. Diocletian makes that choice. She can smell the stink of defeat on Guilliman, like an aura around him. She believes he will die soon. They all will, replies Diocletian. They weren't built to last forever. He later puts on his armour, again for the first time in a while, and goes to the Emperor to see him. He's now on the throne. On his way he passes Kara's grave. It's a space in a wall with a plaque. Many sisters' bones were looted by the mobs of the Imperial faith. Her original grave had been robbed and he couldn't recover the body, but her blade was stored there. He had tracked it and returned it. It is a place now that he can remember her. There's a plaque that marks her life and death, and he reaches the throne and ascends and reaches his king. He looks past the hanging wires that resemble intestines and the clicking, ticking life support engines and the preservative mist sprayed into the air in 9-second intervals. He looks past the blood bags and vita packets linked intravenously to the thing on the throne, which is just a chair compared to the great and grand artworks. A throne without the capital T that makes it both a curse and the salvation of the species. He looks at the reverent husk of something that was somehow once, somehow still is a man. Something that shouldn't be alive and arguably isn't by any mortal measure. Something tortured by its own impossible continuation. Physically starved and psychically bloated on the feast of souls it's forced to devour every day of its endless and agonizing existence. Or is it forced? Maybe it craves this. Maybe it hungers, and he sees the Emperor's features. He stares into what's left of his king's face. And in that moment they appear as two sides of a coin, creator and created, An ageless countenance opposite a living carcass. Each breath he takes draws the scent of the throne into his body, a stinging reek of overworked metal, unable to entirely mask the fainter smell of alchemical solutions and biological waste. Beneath it all, and the worst of all, is a wisp of decay. Diocletian rests his spear before the Emperor's feet, and he asks this question: "My king, do you dream?" And that's where the story ends. It was the last story in that short story collection. It's the one that really grabbed out for me, and I want to make a video on it today. I read it like a couple of hours ago. So I think I've got the essence of it in here, and the more interesting parts of the lore. There's some really good stuff with the Custodes, the beginning of their funeral games, their relationship with the sisterhood. There's a really good duology that covers that. I can't remember its name off the top of my head. So I hope you enjoyed the lore, and I'd love to hear what you think of the lore and the insights we get to hear into what the Custodes think of the primarchs. They really don't like them after the Horus heresy, which I think is highly understandable. So thanks for listening, and I'll wrap up the video there.